Welcome to Know Your Food, the podcast where we explore the world of food by speaking with farmers, makers, entrepreneurs, and experts who are reshaping how we think about what we eat. I'm your host, Michael Ray Robinoff, CEO and co-founder of Farm to People, and we're recording these conversations live from our warehouse in Bushwick, Brooklyn. This week, I'm joined by Sarah Magid, the founder and head baker of Knead Love Bakery, a gluten-free sourdough bakery rooted in seasonality, integrity, and joy. If you've ever picked up one of Sarah's millet, oat, or buckwheat loaves at the farmer's market or through your Farm to People box, you know there's nothing else quite like it. But what you may not know is that Knead Love started as a personal healing journey born out of Sarah's own autoimmune health issues and frustration with the lack of nutritious, gluten-free options that didn't taste like cardboard. We talk about how a former fashion designer turned a side hustle into one of the most beloved booths at the Union Square Green Market. Sarah opens up about her commitment to local sourcing, why she only uses whole, fresh milled grains, and how fermentation, community, and creativity fuel everything she does. She also shares her thoughts on conscious growth, the challenges of running a values-driven business, and what it really takes to scale a bakery without compromising the heart behind the brand. Thanks for tuning in to Know Your Food. If you enjoy today's show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. And now, here's my conversation with Sarah Magid. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining us. The whole team, I will say every single one of us, we're always so happy when a loaf of Knead Love goes unsold because it means we get a chance to have some of your delicious creation. Obviously, I prefer when we sell every single loaf, which we mostly do. It's not just me, but the whole team that gets very excited.
Thank you for having me. And we're really happy to work with you because we always want to be aligned with people who care about similar things that we do. And the fact that you carry so many things from the market and your philosophy really is about regional food. You're like great partners for us.
Thank you. The feeling's mutual. And now, and I've said this on past conversations, I think part of these conversations that is important to me is I feel so fortunate to meet some of the people that I think are just doing amazing things in the local food system, whether they're bakers, farmers, or in any other capacity in the local food space. And I just started to feel like the conversations I was getting to have with you and others were really impactful and informative. And I just wanted to create a place where we could have this conversation a little bit more publicly, share a little bit more about your background, and give people like a little bit of a window into what makes Knead Love happen today and how it came into existence. So with that, I wanted to start with, asking you about sharing that story. What was the creation of Knead Love and how did you go about starting it?
Well, just to go back in time, I grew up in Southern California and we did a lot of baking at home, and baking has always really been part of my life, but it never was something that I thought it would be something I did professionally. My career before Knead Love Bakery was designing jewelry for large fashion brands. I love being in New York City. I love beautiful things. And I was working at a lot of places that were very stressful. And I think when you are just doing something that you think you love, maybe sometimes it's not the right thing. There's signs that can happen that show you that. For me, it was having autoimmune issues flare up in my 30s. And that led me to really reevaluating the food I was eating and making changes in my diet. Part of that was going gluten-free, refined sugar-free, dairy-free. I really couldn't find what I was looking for, which was something that was nutrient-dense, gluten-free. A lot of products that are out there are made with ingredients that are gluten-free, but there's no flavor in them, there's no nutrition, there's a lot of sugar, there's a lot of artificial ingredients in them, and those things, even though they were technically gluten-free, made me feel worse. And being someone who has a baking background and a creative background, I turned to searching for ways to make what I couldn't find, and that was gluten-free sourdough bread for digestion, for flavor, and that's really how things started. And it wasn't like, I'm gonna start this business, I'm gonna have this bakery. It was like, I wanna make this. And all of a sudden, it was like, all these other people were saying like, oh, I heard you make this bread, I'm gluten-free too. And it was very organic and word of mouth. And then it sort of blossomed into what it is today. I mean, there were a lot of other factors, But that's like the general picture of how it started.
I love it. And I was going to ask you, well, we can go in two different directions, and I want to hit both of them in our conversation, both the ingredients, because I think that's really interesting, but also you had a very creative career before. When you approached Knead Love initially, was it more as a new creative outlet or a business? I'm sort of wondering, like, did you come at it from...
It was a total joy project. Just because I love making things with my hands. I mean, I still do, like today, I play music, I do other things. I feel like it's always important to feed your creativity, even if it's totally not related to anything you do professionally. I just think we always should have a joy project in our lives as something that just keeps our fire going. So for me, it's cooking food. Food has always been this deeply emotional, connective thing that I had from childhood through my whole life. And so Knead Love really started with me. I had a mill in my house and my family hated the noise, but we always had fresh flour, making the dough, making the bread, fermenting it on the table or in the oven, baking it, and always having freshly made bread. And then I would bring it to exercise class. I would bring it to friends. And it was almost like just a way of saying I love you to people, like bringing them food and nourishing them.
And was it... When you started baking, was that even before you were gluten intolerant? Did you used to bake
So I had,
sourdough regular?
like 12 years ago, I had a wedding cake business on the side.
Okay.
So I would work in fashion in the day, and then from 6 to 3 a.m. was the baking shift. I did wedding cakes inspired by jewelry. They would have a lot of gold or hand-painted flowers, and it was something that I loved doing. And I actually was approached to write a cookbook about designing cakes with inspiration from jewelry, using organic ingredients. So that was something that I always did, but I never felt like, oh, I'm going to have a bakery, because I loved fashion and I loved my day job. There wasn't anyone doing anything that I felt like I could see myself doing. And I feel like that's carried through into today. I feel like everything comes intuitively about how I want to grow the business, how I want to sell the product. Being at the farmer's market is so important to me for the community. It's not about looking at someone else and copying them. It's really about like finding our own way. And that I think has resonated with how we've grown and finding the right partners and people.
Yeah. And I feel that so much when you talk about the craft and how I didn't realize the wedding cake business prior, but it makes so much sense to me that this is just like, it's been a pursuit and a passion and a while it was a side hustle, it still was something that really like lit your fire. And I think that then speaks so much to the types of ingredients and the creations you're making. I do want to touch on that because I think it's really incredible to look at your ingredient lists and things like millet, teff, and buckwheat, how all of that comes together into this really nourishing, but not overly dense. Like it's got like some lightness to it as well. I want you to talk more about why those ingredients, and then also going even a step further. I know at the green market, they have what I view are great requirements, which are that I think it's 50%, right?
25.
So 25% of all of the ingredients within your product need to be sourced from within like 300 miles?
Yeah, so every bakery at the market follows the baker's rule. It's 25% minimum regional grains for the entire bounty that you bring to the market. We always try to communicate this because I don't think people know that enough when they come to the market. There's a whole team that checks, they look at all of our grains to make sure that we're purchasing. It's really a way to maintain high standards, food sourcing, and supporting the region. And that's really the whole point of being at the market is the community of growers that are there, but also we can see right now what's happening with tariffs and food supply chain problems and the egg crisis, that really knowing where your food comes from is so important. And when you come to the market, you can talk to farmers or you can talk to people who know about the food. There's something about that that's even more important than ever. And going back to what you're saying about the grains, I'm originally from California, and like we were grinding our peanut butter at the grocery store when I grew up. Like we were like, there's a lot of like hippie food, and a lot of these ingredients in the context of a really urban city like New York, people are very extreme. Like they're either super healthy and rigid or they're not. And I feel like for me personally, it was a creative challenge to take very clean ingredients like millet, buckwheat, and oat and really figure out how to pull through the flavors and ideas that I want to have in something that tastes good, and that you're not thinking about the list of ingredients, but at the same time, really keeping the standards super high. So it's almost like when you're an artist painting, the things, your toolkit has very certain elements in it, and you're not going to ever stray from that. So like, we'll never use gums in any of our products. We're never going to use xanthan and like guar, like things that a lot of people do because it either lowers the price or makes it more, it's easier to make something a certain texture. The process of getting somewhere using really high quality things is something that is part of the process. And I feel like it comes through in the end.
Totally. Take us back to, and I guess it's a personal journey where you were always finding a creative outlet in baking, and maybe even some side money too. Like it sounded like the wedding cake business was like
3 a.m.
Yeah. But it was like a side project, not necessarily fulfilling your own personal needs, right? And so then you started to have some autoimmune issues, and you started to feel like the food that was available to you, the gluten-free options that were out there, I think were both not making you feel better, one, and two, maybe not tasting as good as, and you're a creative, you're an entrepreneur, you're someone who took it upon yourself to get in the kitchen and start to create your own creations. Obviously, it didn't start with a business in mind. It really started out of a personal pain point. What were some of those initial tests like? And even going that far back, where were you sourcing your ingredients from at that time?
I mean, I'm very grateful to have known people like June Russell, who really connected me with farms. And at the time, there was the grain stand at the green market. You could go to a stand and they had all these flours from the region that you could try. So there was buckwheat, there was oats, there were beans, there were a lot of things that were gluten-free. You could talk about where they were from and the farmers. And I was able to speak with the president of Maine Grains, who's a woman, and we developed a connection. That's who we order pallets from now. It wasn't actually very hard at the time because there were people that have done the work to really connect bakers with the farmers who grew it or the millers. There also were people like Sarah Owens, who I took classes with. So there were all these like different people along the way that really had a light that taught me something here, or I'm learning something from them here, and then I'm gonna like mix it and use it for what I want it to be. So there's a lot of mentors along the way that really gave a lot of insight and inspiration and knowledge. The people who are really passionate about grains, like they're very passionate about grains, but maybe they don't know about how can you make like a cinnamon, or, I love making Twinkies with like organic maple and buckwheat and things that are like not traditionally known to be in a Twinkie. But like they're thinking, sometimes people are more serious about things.
Totally. No, I love that you bring that joy and creativity to something that needs it. It's really like a special treat, especially if you're going through, and we spoke on the phone, like it's a personal journey, like realizing that I was eating a sandwich or a bowl of pasta and not feeling great, and then trying to look for things that felt delicious and felt like the things that I had to remove. You no longer have joy eating something delicious if it doesn't make you feel good. So that's the one
Exactly. And I feel like there's something for everyone. So we have a lot of people that come to the stand and they're like, I can't eat gluten. And I'm like, it's okay. You can try me. I might not be for you, but there's someone else. A lot of people are having more food issues than I can even count. And I feel like a lot of it is people starting to listen to their bodies and know something's not adding up. And they're trying to figure it out for themselves. A lot of it is gluten, a lot of it is sugar. There's a lot of inflammation with those when you eat them. And I think when people stop eating them, they do feel better because of that. And so it's always a process and a journey. Food is so emotional, and people don't want to feel restricted.
You're so right. I think when you look at a lot of the food, when you're not cooking at home, I always talk about this. When you cook at home, you probably are cooking with olive oil or butter, and you're not really like throwing tons of canola oil or tons of sunflower oil, like and deep fry and all these things that you don't realize when you go out and get food that's made for you, whether it's in a restaurant or whether it's prepared foods, all of the things that get put into it. And then when I look at your ingredients, it's incredible. It's all of these grains we've talked about, but it's also maple syrup, trembly honey. It's not just grains. It's not like, oh, we use great grain. Like, I feel like I don't want to pick on a certain brand, but the RX bar, they would talk about like the only 5 ingredients, but then you'd look at the back and there was a 6th, and it was like not what you'd want. And so it's sort of like yours are truly those 5.
Yes.
And
yes.
I want people to know that.
Flour has so much flavor. And that is one of the things that I learned about milling flour. When you mill a grain, you're getting the entire grain in the mill. So you're getting the shell, the inside, all the parts, the bran. When you get flour at a store, it's usually sifted. So a lot of the nutrition has been removed. Sometimes it sits there for a long time. Flour
It can go rancid, right?
It can go rancid, but also like flour is alive. It's like a living element. And so when it's fresh, things are more available to you when you consume it. So sometimes if something's sitting on a shelf for 3 months or in a warehouse and then it's shipped to the store, it could say something on the back like it has this much, potassium, whatever, but it actually might not, just because it's just dying off. So having the fresh milled flours really unlocks so much flavor, especially because we only do wild fermentation for our breads and bagels and treats. We don't use any commercial yeast. So we're sort of, one with the elements to develop that flavor, and also for the rise of the bread. And I mean, I'm sure you've had the bread. Sometimes it's like a little flat, sometimes it's puffy, sometimes it's really sour, sometimes it's not. And it's like you're sort of living through the seasons with the food, because we're subject to nature in our process.
It can literally be like the humidity or the heat
Yes.
level of the day.
Yes.
If it's cold and dry, it's different.
I feed the starter the night before, and sometimes if it's, if I feed a lot of it and it's a little bit weaker, it will take a little bit longer to ferment, and then it can get a little bit more sour. Everything about it is dynamic. That is so important, because that is what life is. Like, nothing is static.
Totally.
And our food, when it's fresh, it's really a reflection of the environment that we're in.
Have you ever let your starter die?
No.
Never.
No.
Oh my God. Wow.
He's my baby.
It's a baby. Yeah. It's incredible. Who did you get your first starter from?
From Sarah Owens. She had a gluten-free baking class in the Rockaways 8 years ago. And she was like, it's really important that everyone name your starter, because then you won't let it die, because it has a name. I was like, that's so smart. So mine is named after Seymour in Little House of...
Seymour.
Suddenly Seymour. He's delicious. He smells like baby feet. That's the smell you want to
You're
go
like,
for.
feed me.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. Amazing. So your starter's name is... What do you do when you travel with your starter? That's like, I feel like a
There's
question.
babysitters.
There's babysitters.
There's
You have
babysitters. And then
Do you find them
sometimes-
like Craigslist? Where do you
I
find
mean, they're my team, my baking team. But sometimes I'll keep some at home just to make sure I have a backup.
Backup. Do you dehydrate it?
Well, I've started to dehydrate it, so I also have that. So I have like a lot of things. So
I feel like a lot of people got into baking
yes.
in the pandemic, and then
Yes.
everyone's like, well, my starter died.
I have to say, though, the pandemic really helped us, because so many people know what sourdough is because of the pandemic. I think before, everybody thought it was like San Francisco sourdough at the airport, like in a bag. They didn't really know like the process and how it works. And I think the pandemic, everybody fed a starter, made bread. It was really good.
Even
us.
if your starter died, I think it gives you such an appreciation for those who can keep them alive.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
So I think net win for
Absolutely.
sure. And then going back to the whole grain, I think that's so interesting as well. People aren't used to really experiencing like a freshly milled, but also like all of the parts of the grain. Talk a little bit more about how that changes the profile of the bread from a flavor, but also a nutritional standpoint.
I mean, if you think about it, you're getting the complete grain in the bread. So that's one element of nutrition. You're getting the bran, the fiber, all the elements that are in, for example, the cracked oats. That's what we use as our main flour for all of our sourdough. And there's only oat, buckwheat, millet, and teff. Those are the 4 flours that we use in the bread, and that's it. And then we hand mill the organic sourdough starter, and that's organic brown rice. So the sourdough starter itself has the full rice in it. So that's a very flavorful starter. And then it goes into a very flavorful mix of flours. I can't speak to the exact nutrition profile of it, but it's all whole grains. And so there's higher fiber, and also with the sourdough starter, fermenting for 24 hours, it pulls from all of those fresh bacteria from the hand-milled grains. Sometimes people will eat our bread and they're like, wow, what's the flavor? And it's really the time of the fermentation that develops the flavor. It's also having fresh milled grains. If you did a side-by-side comparison of like oat flour from a store with a fresh milled, it's so different.
And
that's why also with business, thinking about scaling or growing, I don't think I ever could be in a co-packer or somewhere where they just bought flour and put it in the machine. I don't think the product would have the soulful flavor that it does because of the process of what we do to even get to the place where we mix the dough. There's a full 2 days of work before we get to that point, and then there's still the fermentation, and then the baking, and then the selling at the market. So it's a real process that takes a lot of time.
Absolutely. I just want to touch on the grain and the nutrient density. I kind of think of it, and let me know if this is misguided. I'm not a nutritionist either, but like when you think about, and sometimes like drinking juices, like will get a bad rap versus like eating the whole orange or eating the whole apple. Is it sort of a similar thing where it's like when you are milling the entire grain, you're getting all of that fiber.
Absolutely.
And you're losing that by stripping it or bleaching.
I think so. And also, I mean, when I eat the cracked oats, because we receive, so with like main grains, for example, we receive a pallet of the cracked oats, and then we have to toast the oats because when you mill oats, they have a lot of fat in them and they will gum up the mill. So we toast them first, let them cool, then we mill it into flour. And it has such a deep, nutty, delicious flavor that it's not the same as when you have oatmeal or anything like that. It does have the full exterior on it. So you are just having more fiber in it. And there is more to digest, like compared to your juice example.
Yeah, totally. Going back to the business side, which you made me think about in terms of conscious scaling, even in exploring our relationship of working together, there was a real like, how will we do this while maintaining the integrity of your business and the integrity of the product? How do we work? How will we make this work well together? And I think that's really wonderful. And, you know, I am curious because a lot of businesses that start, especially brands, their goal is to be like RX Bar. You know, it's to grow huge and create a brand. And if you have to cut some corners along the way, so be it. We're going to be huge and some CPG business.
I think those people start out wanting that. Like they're like, okay, this is a business plan. I'm going to get investors. I want to have the best health bar, you know, or something like that. And I think that's what's really interesting about Knead Love is that it really was not a business when it started. It really was, I'm going to make really amazing gluten-free sourdough bread because I can't find it. I'm going to share it with friends of friends. And like in the beginning, we had all these pickups at like friends of friends, like beauty stores or exercise spaces. It was not like a conventional place to purchase bread or pick up bread. And it was all people that wanted to support me or just felt like it was a place they wanted to like energize their space. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like energy has been such an important part of Knead Love Bakery because at the stand or with people who make connections or share the same values as us, we've come together and then other things have gone off from that. I think when you set out to do something from your heart and you love doing it, it could be a business or it could not be a business. Having this be a business, I realize I spend a lot of time doing it, but I really love it. And I think that's really important in our work to find something about it because it's time, and time is such a precious thing. And when you spend time doing something you love, it doesn't feel like a burden.
Absolutely. So well said. And when you think about those opportunities as they come up, and of course, like Knead Love is now such a staple. You've done such a great job from a brand and business perspective, even while not setting out to really become one of the vendors that people are going to the market for. I'm sure opportunities, different people have come to you for various things. How do you let that initial love, that initial seed of like the why, how do you let that guide your sort of future projects that you take on and leading from the heart while also being practical?
Most people who want to do collaborations or do things together, it's a very like-minded thing. So it's always exciting to engage with them. For example, we're at all the matcha-ful cafes and they give us their organic matcha and they're like, make something with our matcha that we can sell at our cafe, like things like that. And I'm not going to sell that at the market because matcha is very hard to purchase in big quantity. But it's really been all about a series of alignments and finding people. And like for what Farm to People does, for example, bringing the farmers market to people, it's a very simple idea. A lot of people want to go to the market, but they just can't get there. And so you're bringing it to them. Like it's a very simple idea, but it's like those people care so much about having produce that they know where it's from. And it's the same thing with the bread. It's like people want to know personally how it's made, what's in it, and they care a lot about what we use and aligning with a lot of our other values and who we're using.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the market is such an amazing place. It's where it's the pre-Farm to People. It's where I worked for Hawthorne Valley Farm, selling sauerkraut, cutting cheese, selling bread. They had it had gluten, but they had a very dense rye that until I tried yours, it was hard to find. Yours is I won't tell that, outdoes theirs, but
we trade at the market. The person
do you trade? Yeah.
Yeah, because
I
they
love
like
that.
our buckwheat donuts, and we use their sauerkraut in our rye knot bread. So we have a thing, and I love their sauerkraut so much. They're so delicious and flavorful.
So to me, yeah, like you mentioned, always going to the market. There's these hardcore folks that go to the market every morning. They're like the first people there.
Yes.
And Farm to People isn't a solution for them. Like they know how to get their food. They love it. The people that would come at like 11, 12 p.m. that would like race there and be like, oh my God, I'm so glad I could make it today, but you hadn't seen them in a month.
Yeah.
Those are the people that I feel like want to eat this way and want to get the Knead Love or the She-Wolf or the Hawthorne Valley or the Halal Pastures, all of these different products. But yeah, then the only pre-Farm to People, I felt like, the only option was to then sort of default to Whole Foods or to default
Fresh
to
Direct
Fresh
or something,
Direct.
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And our whole goal was, how do we try to emulate the convenience factor that these big players capture with the selection that you feel like you could get on a Wednesday or a Friday at Farm
We
to
have people who come and they're like, I got my order this week from Farm to People, or they come to us because there's other things they want to try. So I feel like it's a very mutual thing for people who know about you and shop from you and then also come to the market when they can, because, it is hard sometimes to get there.
That makes me very happy. Thank you for sharing that. It's been a long journey. Like part of while I worked at the farmer's market, I'm not personally a farmer or really a maker of any kind. Like, sounds sad, but I look at myself as, a connector and a person that can kind of figure out. Initially, it's like, oh, you work in food. And then I was like, really what we're doing is connecting dots. It's really logistics. It's really the unsexy sort of stuff. Some people find it sexy, but few and far between.
Yeah.
And it's the work of just trying to get the freshest, most delicious product, which is all highly perishable.
Yeah. Story of my life.
To people. All right, moving back to something else that was really interesting to me and something we contend with. I know the craft that goes in, the time, the ingredient sourcing, all of the quality. And that's how I feel about everything that we carry at Farm to People, although at different levels. But one of the things we contend with is price. Customers are like, but why does food cost this much? Like, I can go to Trader Joe's is the word, like I can get a 19-cent banana or whatever.
Yeah.
And they really don't value everything else that goes into it. And obviously, I think Knead Love is such a good example. I wanted to ask you this because I know the love and the care that you put into it, and I know why your product costs what it does.
When people come to me, they're like, this is so expensive. I'm like, I know. I do wish that food in general could be more accessible, but the reality is not only are you paying a premium, especially we try to source organic and the highest quality, but I also want to pay my staff really well because they're putting their time and energy into making the product. So that's part of the cost as well. And then also, everything that we do, the time is very hard to put into, like, it costs this much when the fermentation something happens with the fermentation, or just the whole process takes a long time. I've noticed over the years, we've been at the green market for 4 years, we don't really have price resistance anymore, and a lot of it is because other people inflate the price, saying they're gluten-free or saying they're vegan, and the ingredients are really poor quality, and the food doesn't taste good. I think people really value when we say exactly where we're sourcing everything from, that it's organic, how it's made. I think they're starting to realize that health is wealth and you pay now or you pay later. And so I think people are okay paying because they also feel like the bread, there's 18 half-inch slices, that's 9 sandwiches. There's definitely value for what you're getting because it's not being consumed really fast, and then you can taste that there's longevity and there's value to it. We always talk through why it's expensive though, and it's really the ingredients too.
Yeah, which again, I know how expensive those ingredients are in the care. So I get it. I also think something like a hack that people should, I don't know if people do this and you tell people to do this at the market, but personally, I will slice it and then freeze it. And it just allows it to, I might not eat 9 sandwiches.
We have hats and the back says slice and freeze.
Oh, I had no idea. I promise. I had no idea.
It's our slogan. But I feel like one of the things we really also try to advocate is for people to bring containers. It's not just because we don't want to use paper bags. It's because when you put something in a container, you can put it in your refrigerator or freezer, and then it is a great holding place. Everything we make freezes well, and I think the freezer does not get enough credit in our lives because it really holds on to moisture, keeps things sort of on hold, I guess, until you're ready to eat it. The refrigerator dries things out. So we're real advocates for slicing and freezing, holding everything in safe vessels so nothing gets ruined in a bag.
Totally.
Stay sustainable.
Cool. I'm glad I'm not the only one. I had no idea the slice and freeze, but should be the slogan.
Our slogan.
Yeah, I love it. Now that you have, you are a small independent bakery that's succeeding, and we want to see more of you succeed. How do you view, especially, I like to talk a little bit on a more macro level, obviously given the current political climate, given grant funding, given all the things that we have going on right now, what are sort of the challenges and opportunities on the horizon for both yourself and because I think this is indicative of all the makers that we work with at Farm to People, they're probably facing similar challenges. So I just want you to speak to the business side and the real grit. You may be having a lot of fun, but there
is. Like today, for example, we're trying to source new packaging. And with the tariffs, it's like we can't do it because it's doesn't even make sense. And so things like that are really frustrating because I see that people are having it in their businesses on similar levels for one thing that they need to complete their business. I'm grateful that we source so much from the region, but I imagine, for example, the pallets that the grain comes on or other things that take for the local product to get to us must be affected as well. So, for example, our honey price went up because of congestion pricing because they come in from upstate New York. I think also trying to figure out wholesale versus being at the market. It's really hard in the winter. We're year-round at the market, and this has been a really true cold winter, which is great for Mother Nature. But it's really hard. I feel like every dollar you make, I feel it in my hands, freezing, standing outside. So trying to figure out maybe other ways to sell that are not compromising who we are, because there aren't a lot of places that are I want to sell a $20 loaf of bread and I have an audience that will buy it. There are many places, but are those finite? I'm always thinking about where's the next place. I'm sort of realizing a lot of it has to come from community building, finding the areas where the like-minded people are, doing pop-ups and connecting people there, and then they become customers, and then we do e-commerce nationwide. So a lot of those people become customers. For example, I have family in California. I do pop-ups in LA. People invite us to do pop-ups in different places, and I find that to be a dynamic way of doing business. It is still a lot of preparation and things like that. I'm also starting to schedule classes at our new space. We took over She-Wolf's old production bakery space in Greenpoint.
Amazing.
Put some pink in. There's a lot of blue, so we painted that over. And that's part of my strategy of also growing the business in a different way, which is teaching, community building, hosting not just food classes, but makers that connect to food and having a space where people can come. So that's something very different, a little tricky to plan, but exciting.
Amazing. Do you ever think about opening a retail shop?
It's so funny because I feel like if I wanted to, I would have, and for some reason I haven't. And then every time I ask the wise women in my life who have worked in food or who have worked in restaurants, they're always like, don't do it. And I'm like, why? It seems, and they're like, don't do it. So I just sort of don't feel like it's the right thing for me now. I'm not saying I wouldn't ever do it, but it would have to be something like really in alignment where there's like an amazing landlord that wants me there. So they're not going to charge like $80,000 a month or something, like all the places where I would want to be, it's really cost prohibitive. And I also don't know if that's, there's a lot of behind the scenes work of running a retail that is really, really challenging.
I mean, similar to what you're mentioning, it's different, but similar. Like at a market, you can't decide if it's raining that day. So if it rains, you're sort of writing off the cost of that labor and possibly that product.
And because we're fermenting, we work 3 days ahead of time.
Can't even plan the weather.
I'm like part-time meteorologist. So I know the weather for every day. For example, it was supposed to sort of rain tomorrow, but it's now going to be sunny. So today we were able to make some extra, we do these like gluten-free vegan blueberry crumble cakes. So we were able to make more of those because that's something that doesn't ferment. It's more of a quick batter. So sometimes I can play a little bit with the pars for the market when it's close to the time, but I can't really take away what we've made. It is sometimes a challenge, but that's when we do a lot of gifting or samples, so the food never goes to waste. And I really, like, food waste is not okay with me.
I think it's so most people don't think about all of these different layers to running a business. And then like I'm sure beyond being a part-time meteorologist, the call outs, the things that can happen. And again, you have to be at the market at 6, 7 a.m. and, get set up by 8 and be there.
My cat wakes me up at 5:15. So he's kind of my unpaid market staff that's like making sure.
I love that.
And his name is Sourdough.
Sourdough. Seymour and Sourdough. Those are your two.
Yeah, Sourdough. So he's really involved.
He's really involved. Just kidding. I love that. Oh, that's amazing. And then coming down to the last two questions, you've sort of answered this, but I'm always curious because it's sort of when we start talking to a new vendor, we want to like pitch how we feel we're working towards helping the food system and what Farm to People stands for. We've been working together for, I think, close to a year now, which is awesome.
It's amazing.
And I'm just curious, how has your view either evolved or changed, and how's your experience been working with Farm to People?
It's been great. And I think the point that I made earlier is that we're getting new customers at the market because they're buying at Farm to People. And then also when people are like, I miss the market, I'm like, you can order from Farm to People. So it's almost like a way for us to share, because I know people coming to the market, some of them do just come for us, but some of them also come to do their shopping. And they're really disappointed if they have to go to a Trader Joe's for greens or not be able to get the local food that they want. I also just feel when I work with someone who has values that are aligned with us, all the things that you care about, I care about. All the people that you work with, I know them at the market and I purchase products from them directly and I value what they do. Like how you had Ronnie Brook last week. We get their garlic butter, we get their half and half, we get their, these are the people that I personally support and eat. And so it's very much a forward and backward flow of the regional food system. We didn't really talk about like wellness culture and places that have things that are all about like high protein and gluten-free and vegan. And there's like that whole area of this world of gluten-free, but then there's also the regional gluten-free, which is a lot more niche and harder because there's not a lot of gluten-free grains that are being grown in the region. It's easier for a farmer to make money purchasing or selling wheat, things that are just more common for people to bake with. So that's why we also really appreciate that we're one of your vendors, because I feel like you're helping the person who can't eat the she-wolf get something to eat in the same order and knowing that it's regional as well.
And I hope, like, one of my own personal visions for what we can hopefully help do is show that because we're working with the farmer who might even be able to grow the grain, and we're also working with the baker, and then we have the customer, a future dream, we have a lot of room to grow
really
to
into
get
this.
there.
Yeah.
But a future dream is like, how can we actually help not just supply chain to the end customer, but supply chain to other vendors that we carry? And
That'd be amazing.
I dream of that day coming.
I'm with you in that dream.
Awesome. And we're going to need everybody to be, it's not going to just happen. We're going to have to be smart. And then last question, you have such an amazing aura. You bring so much joy to this room and to the work that you do. Do you have a favorite, if you don't have a favorite child in terms of the products that you're making, what brings you the most joy to make?
Okay, so I have this dream of like a bodega, and instead of being like Twinkies, Hostess, it's all of our versions of those things. Right now, we just introduced our Drake cake, which is our version of the coffee cake. It's made with Roxbury Mountain Maple organic maple syrup. It has burlap and barrel cardamom and cinnamon. And so we're also doing a Lil Debbie, which is like the oatmeal, the cream. And so those are the things that I just have so much fun developing because I just think they're really funny and like people get it and it makes them like smile when they come to the stand, or just like the Drake cake. We've had it for 2 weeks at the market and all these people are like, it reminds me of like my grandma's coffee cake. And people talk about like how it makes them feel. And it's like a very validating feeling, but also just a fun thing to share. I just really like doing the funny things that are in the serious ingredients.
It all comes through in every way, like in the flavor, but also in how you represent the brand and the packaging and the whimsical nature of it, while also being very serious and very delicious. So personally, so thankful for what you're creating, and thankful for you being here tonight and chatting with me. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for listening to Know Your Food, a podcast from Farm to People. If today's conversation got you thinking differently about what's on your plate or where it comes from, we'd love if you shared this episode with a friend or left us a review. It helps more people discover the folks reimagining the future of food from the ground up. And if you're in the New York tri-state area, you can shop from our network of small, regenerative, independent farms and makers at farmtopeople.com. And stay in the loop by signing up for our newsletter or joining us on Instagram at farmtopeople. Until next time, eat well and know your food.